things. And so, the elephant in the room, the amp doesn't have an effects loop. Man, I got some nasty emails.
Can you explain why? Is that the preference for you, or it's a Doug question where there's too much signal noise from the phase inverter and the power resistance?
Well, let me start by saying I've been playing on records for about 35 years. Some of the records were pretty big records, and a couple of them won Grammys. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm going to say that I quite often play with other guitar players on sessions that also have a lot more Grammys and #1 songs they played on than me. And in that entire period of time, I have never seen one guitar player or one instance of anyone ever using an effects loop. Ever. Not once. Never. Not once. Ever. Nobody uses an effects loop. No, none. So, they're also using equipment that's more like what I'm using too. So here's the deal on effects loops. The argument for effects loops that I understand is that modulation effects sound better after the gain. Delays are less muddy, reverbs are less muddy, time-based effects. And I have heard people use that live, but they're not session players really. Not that that's wrong or better or bad, but these are people that have the approach that's opposite of mine, where they want all the gain coming from the preamp section. So that's where their overdrive is happening in the preamp section. Then you insert an effects loop. So it's essentially like the distortion pedals going into the delay. Okay. I see where that sounds okay. Do you see what I'm doing here? I'm having distortion pedals go into the delay and then into the amp. So the bulk is over half of the distortion that you're hearing coming out of this amp is coming from the power tubes. That would be after the effects loop. So if you put an effects loop in, you're going to be sending your delays and everything into the part of the distortion. It just doesn't make any sense. If you want an effects loop, buy a different amp. Seriously, I mean, there's no one amp that's perfect for everybody. You can't do it. I'm trying to get an amp that I will use on stage and live and will be uncompromising, and I won't have any regrets about it. And so I designed it the way I would play it. And
what tubes are in there?
EL84s.
So for 15, that's only
2. So, the secret, I mean, I get like a lot of emails from people saying, how do you make your delays work before the amp? Well, kind of the same way that Jimmy Page used an Echoplex and Eddie Van Halen used an Echoplex. You just have to turn the amount of the delay going into the amp lower than you think you might. Because when you play hard, the delays are going to get louder and then it just gets muddy. So turn the mix down. Try it. You know, I mean, don't send as much delay into the amp. I'm not saying that, you know, if you like effects loops and you want a big stereo rig and it feels good and it's fun, I'm all about fun, man. Let's make it fun. Do it. But this is not that kind of amp. This is an amp that will react with your touch. It will let you develop that touch. You'll become more, as you play it more, and you will realize that if I play harder, or if I play this way with my left hand, if I mute a certain way, the amp is going to give me something back, as opposed to just, you know, a Kemper with tubes, which is not giving me anything back in my hand. And again, it's not for everybody, but in my genre of music, which is blues rock or Americana or country, all those things, Every great record I've ever heard has been made with an amp that works like this. 90%, I don't want to say every because I'll be inundated with people saying, what about? But 90% of those records were made with amps like this, whether it's a deluxe reverb or a Tweed Deluxe or an AC30 or a Plexi Marshall or a metal front Marshall or a high watt. It's all an amp that's designed like this, and none of them had effects loops. Yes, sir.
Are you a big fan of